Okay, I am back. So, the stream begins. Glad to see 17 people in already. Sorry for starting a little bit late. I have a good excuse. I was recording videos. So, this is, I think, live stream number 5 for the channel. So, yeah, we are now regularly scheduled at Tuesday and Saturday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And we do a couple hours. And once in a while, if I have free time, I will also do surprise streams. But yeah, here we go. I've been doing a lot of recording the last couple days. Got the video on the truck protests and the whole Trudeau doing emergency action up on the channel. I also just finished Lenin's critical remarks on the national question. That'll be going up after this stream. And I also just did a real quick COVID update, basically talking about the incoming BA.2 subvariant of Omicron, which has significant potential to reinfect even people who had BA.1 strains of Omicron. So that's not good, particularly as the governments are dropping a lot of COVID restrictions. So anyway, let's go through the chat and see who's here. Rose Red Flechette says first. Yes, I agree. Dan says hi. Hi, Dan. Elephants on Coke. Hola. Hello. Another patron there. I recognize the name. Hard to forget that one. KR Class Struggle. What up? Just getting started. Excited to do the stream. We've already got 20 people in, so that's good. Let's see. Dan doesn't hear me. Okay, yeah, it's because catching up with the chat. Welcome to the desert of the real. Let's see. Okay, so I think catching up with the actual questions. Will S4A do a live Twitter space? I don't even know if I have that feature in Twitter. I don't know. Is that a feature that everybody has? I'm not sure if I even can do one. I'd probably just do Twitch, honestly. I'm not like a big fan of online teleconferencing. I don't think it works that well. Like I've been in some Discord conversations where it's just like, 10 people all trying to talk at the same time and kind of chaotic and pointless. But so I don't know. If somebody can like sell me on the virtues of doing a live Twitter space, then maybe. The Twitter has actually grown a lot. I think I'm at like 3850 subscribers right now. And, I'll just say to anybody looking to build like a socialist Twitter account, follow people. There's a lot of great comrades out there who have like 50 followers or fewer. And, a lot of them follow like the S4A account regularly, and they're great. I love interacting with those people. They have good insights, but nobody's following them because, they don't have a podcast. They don't have a big name. They're just a random comrade. But, go follow those people. And many follow back. Some don't. But, we got to network with each other. I think that's important. So, yeah. Anyway, a few thoughts there. Let's see. Do I have any major disagreements with Lenin? Charmander says. None so far. Nothing's really coming to mind. So I'll say basically no. That said, I haven't read everything Lenin wrote, so I don't know. But as far as major disagreements, none so far. I mean, they successfully, the Bolsheviks under, Lenin was a significant leader within the Bolsheviks, successfully negotiated some extremely difficult terrain and established the first, socialist revolution on a nationwide scale. Amazing achievement. And, any disagreements I may have with him along the way, I mean, it's not like just purely an ends justified the means thing. It's that everybody makes mistakes, yet also, I mean, in this case, Lenin's leadership was tremendously effective. So I'd say major disagreements, no. Rose red flechette. That's why I never wear a mask. I never leave the house. Yeah, it's getting rough out there. KR class struggle is completely mystifying. Excuse me. By the way, I just want to say I've had some kind of a cold this week. In one of my videos, the Marx and Engels on the Bakuninists, my voice was like honking in places. It was really hard to record that. I'm better now, but I still have to clear my throat a lot. So if my voice is cracking or if I like choke in the middle of a word, that's why. I'm just really congested in my throat. Anyway, it's completely mystifying as to why some Western leftists support the fascist truckers. I think it's just basic ignorance of, I mean, it's not doing class analysis. It may be just they see people with signs, don't know any of the background, and just decide these are my friends because, you know, people in suits, like the business class or whatever, don't get out there and protest things. But this is how you get hoodwinked into supporting faux populist, you know, big bourgeoisie bankrolled stuff. It's like, remember Joe the plumber that all the Republicans like fell for in the Tea Party days? Guy wasn't actually even a plumber. You know, so it's stuff like that. Oh, you know, you put some people in a truck, must be working class. People don't dig further. So I don't know. But I will say that, you know, in some very unofficial polls online, there was a pretty significant ANCOM account, Comrade Star. They may be ANCOM, but I generally I like Comrade Star's tweets most of the time. They ran a poll that was like, do you support the convoy? And it was 92% said no. So, I mean, I think a lot of people get it. It's just the ones that don't are extremely loud grifters, I think is a large part of it. So you got apparently Kyle Kalinske supporting it, Jimmy Dore, Richard Wolff, Russell Brand. I mean, who I don't think anybody really thinks of as like left. He's some Hollywood comedian. You know, oh, who's the anti-vax? What's her name? Fiorella. Yeah. You know, you got some extremely loud grifters who ride that libertarian Tulsi zone, and you know, and they have devoted followers who definitely are vocal in their support and pretty aggressive. They're not left. I mean, they're not left. What we need to do is focus on building the left, focus on having correct positions, and teaching people those correct positions, you know, not to like divide over minutia, but like there are major questions that have come up. The whole like patriotic or nationalist socialism, that was a big question that we faced last year, sort of collectively in the online discussion that was being had about this, people participating, and people hashed it out. A lot of really interesting conversations were had there. I found a lot of good people to start following and listening to from that. So, I mean, that, you know, it's a benefit when these things happen because we get to actually try to apply theory and historical lessons to the present day, because that's what it's all about, trying to solve present day political problems. And you see, you know, who is receptive to learning and who just fucking isn't. And, you know, you start to see clear patterns, like Jimmy Dore, for example, couldn't be any clearer. I mean, he's, you know, from the promoting the Boogaloo thing on and on. It's a consistent pattern. You know, all the Tucker Carlson appearances that are uncritical of, I mean, Tucker Carlson, you know, I like to say cable TV had been a thing during Nazi Germany. It's basically what it looked like. And, you know, Jimmy Dore's just like, wow, Tucker gets it. And it's like, eat shit. So, anyway, Charmander, the Western left is pure disappointment. I mean, I wouldn't say it's pure disappointment. Like I said, you know, they're 92% in that one poll of like about 500 leftists got it. So, I mean, you know, I think that as we improve as a movement, as we get better educated and organized, and we sort of hold each other in check with, you know, correct discussion of history and theory, do the class analysis, step fucking one. As more people like actually learn to do this, I do think there will be more improvements. So, yeah. I mean, I've seen improvements in myself since like reading a lot more of this stuff. So, yeah. I'm not this person says my university is literally just like, let's go back to normal and ditch the masks and everything else. Yeah, you're not alone. I mean, the governor of I was just reading like a big thing about New York State. The governor Kathy Hochul was like 1 week it was like gotta wear a mask, gotta wear a mask, and then it was like, oh yeah, if you want to, and it's just I'm getting whiplash from like the position switching here. So it's kind of across the board. I was just looking at Iceland. Iceland, the cases are going up exponentially, and Denmark, the deaths are going up exponentially, and these are countries that have decent vaccination even. So keep wearing your mask and get an N95. I honestly prefer the N95 over the KN95 because of the head straps rather than the ear loops. The KN95s, like substance-wise, are good. I just find they don't stay on my head as well, so the seal isn't as tight. If you don't have that issue, then by all means use a KN95, whatever's easiest for you. But make sure it has a good seal because COVID is airborne and is an aerosolized disease. Comes out of people's exhaled breath. I mean, it's winter now. If you're in a cold place, go stand outside, exhale, and watch all the water vapor in your breath form a big cloud and drift away. Okay? That's what COVID is doing. So you can see various computer graphics of aerosolized COVID, and I mean it spreads rapidly. I don't know what else to say. Let's see. Elephants on Coke, hey S4A, did you see the question I posted on your last Patreon post? I did not. If you would like to, I usually go through the Patreon because they have notifications, and I look at those, but I think I missed it. Actually, you know what? Let me look at it right now if I can find it as it loads. I would say to just put it in the chat, but it probably would be easier. No, I actually don't see, unless you send it in messages. Maybe it was a question about the post, but I don't think it was on the post. All right, loading the messages. Loading the messages. Come on, load. No, actually, I didn't get your message at all. So if you want to post it in the chat, I'm happy to respond to it now. Moving on. I'm not this person. I hate that the news is already COVID is over again. Like, bruh. Yeah. No shit. Like, but, then again, I mean, look at what else is in the news. The U.S. is trying to tell people, trying to lie the world into another war again. Like, can we just stop doing this? And the New York Times enthusiastically reporting on it, and all the shit libs just, retweeting it like crazy, and Russia's the enemy and blah, blah, blah. Like, even the U.S. leaders have been like, Russia's an adversary, not an enemy. Like, they're a competitor that, you know what I mean? Like, the official line is not even like Russia's the enemy. They're just sort of a, non-cooperative, like, competitor. I just, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing and trying to build the channel, and other people are doing the same thing, is just to try to maybe at some point, organize a significant faction of society that can, end this whole current state of events. Because, yeah, how many times are people going to fall for the same fucking bullshit over and over again? Apparently, they're never going to stop trying to push it. So, the question is just what we do about it. KR class struggle. I swear all U.S. Americans just think that if they stop all the protections against COVID and pretend it doesn't exist, it'll cease to exist. Yeah, so the ostrich method is not going to work here. Head in the sand just gets sand in your head. No mask just gets COVID in your lungs. I don't know. It's bad. I mean, I am beyond frustrated with it. If you told me 2 years ago that this is where we would wind up again, I would be shocked. Like, I can't believe they're just throwing everything away. It's not going to end well. This is how you get a virus that mutates and becomes, like, extremely lethal, is just by allowing it to continue to mutate and mutate. When you already have a virus that can cause as much damage as COVID can, this is not going to end well. I don't know what else to say. Omicron should be proof of that. BA.2, even more proof of that. Also, Omicron is greatly mutated versus previous strains of COVID. It's not quite a brand new disease, but it's closer than ever. It's going to be having new tricks that we don't even understand yet. And if you look at the medical research on just earlier strains of COVID, they're just now understanding things about it, 2 years after this became a thing. And now we want new variants to start popping up every couple of months with significant mutations. We don't know what they're going to do to us. And the research on that isn't going to be known for like 4 to 6 months at a minimum. So it's insane. I mean, it's insane. We know the reasons, the interests of private property and private run industry, capital, demand that people just keep working. They're not doing this because it makes good public health sense. They're doing it for economic reasons. They have no choice, basically. But it is not going to end well. I mean, again, the two major subvariants of Omicron are evidence that this is going to keep getting out of control. And there's no reason whatsoever to think it would stop there. So Mikey Makes Mistakes says 5 people in a Discord call, but one of them has satellite internet. Yeah, anyway, it's been a while since I've done that. What do we have? Dirk Richter, a patron. What do you think about workplace organizing, like the Starbucks unionization efforts? What do I think is the more the better? We need to absolutely rebuild the labor movement. Actually, speaking of COVID, the lack of a militant labor movement is, really any kind of labor movement, is why this is happening. I was just tweeting about that earlier today. I mean, you know what the government's going to do. They're going to keep pushing you into working during a deadly pandemic. Labor unions going on strike and refusing work, that's step one, sort of in saying, hell no. Hold on. Friggin' souped up car driving by. It's like, anyway. What is it? I was on a libertarian forum at one point. Apparently they're big fans of, quote, muffler delete. Like, okay, your personality is just being obnoxiously antisocial and pissing off everyone around you. Hence things like the convoy. What is that? Who hurt you? But anyway, so what do I think about it? Is if we want to, under capitalism, become any kind of a counterpower to capital and have the power to really refuse things, we need that organizing. So the Starbucks unionization popping up, that's been great. Other unions have tried to organize at Starbucks in like the last decade or so. Significantly less successful than this round, so I'm happy that it is more successful. Yeah, it needs to be done. I mean, for socialists, not all labor unions are revolutionary, to say the least. However, having some kind of an infrastructure where radicals can get into a labor union and then push the union, pull it left. There are things you can pull left and things you can't pull left. The leadership of the Democratic Party, or probably the Democratic Party at most levels. No, you cannot pull that left. But various other organizations, you absolutely can, and it's worth it for Marxists to get in there and do whatever you can to try to pull it left. Blatant entryism is one thing where an org is like trying to take over another org. But if you're a random individual, get in there. Like do whatever you can. Just make sure that the union is going as hard as it possibly can in a way that makes sense. So Chris Morlock, you guys are just a bunch of red liberals, the thinnest coat of red paint ever. All right, well, I guess it's time to figure out how to run the ban feature, because honestly, we had a troll last time. That was the first troll, and I don't know, people making comments like that with no. If you want to actually like talk about an issue, then fucking talk about an issue. When you just come in with like, you're a liberal, I can't respond to that. Okay, you're a troll. Let's shake hands. Both just made like a blanket statement about the other. Okay. Dirk Richter, I guess I mean specifically in 2022, are there prospects there for a widespread workers' movement? Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't there be? The only thing is that labor laws are really stacked against workers. That's the main barrier that has existed for a long time. Um, so but that's nothing new. Um, you just got to be aware of that. But yeah, I mean, conditions are about as bad as ever. People are as desperate as ever. People want solutions. So yeah, there's definitely prospects there for a widespread workers' movement. I guess my question is just why wouldn't there be? The labor movement's been in decline since about 1960, and I guess in the last few decades it's sort of bottomed out around like 7%, something like that. At least in the private sector, the public sector is more unionized. Um, yeah, so I mean, definitely yes. I guess if you have anything more specific, that would be maybe respond to that. Elephants on Coke. Didn't I get the memo? Ukraine is more important than COVID now. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say. The Biden presidency has been awful. It's strongly reminiscent of like Bush and Cheney. Really, really not good. Dan says looks like Russia will get involved in the East Ukraine region. Yeah, this is not a topic I have been following closely for a long time. So, it's not something that's easy for me to jump into. Hence, I haven't been commenting on it a lot. Um, I don't know. People have recommended resources to me. Uh, the concern, obviously, is that the U.S. and NATO seem to be finally setting up more of a World War III situation because there's been this kind of Cold War against China and Russia for some time, but this is sort of the closest thing to like a direct military conflict, and they're excuse me, I like burped and my voice failed at the same time. They're flirting with disaster on a level that is just has not been seen up to this point. So I don't know. What do we have? So, Rose Red Flechette, what's my take on Mao being a third development on Marxism and reasons why people disagree on that? I don't see that conversation being that helpful to the movement, honestly. I mean, whether it is or it isn't, Mao is significant. No one really denies that. So, we'll be doing more of a section on, like, Maoism proper, probably much later in the year, like late fall. I have a lot of other stuff that I want to get to on the channel. Um, I don't really have a strong take on that. And I mean, when I see people arguing about Maoism versus Dengism, like, if you want to have the conversation about is China headed in the right direction, okay, that's fine. Um, I mean, it's fine in the sense of like, I think that there's potential for that to be like a little bit more productive. But a lot of the like Maoist Dengist clash, it's just seems like kind of fandom to me. So I guess I don't want to get hugely involved in that at this point, and it's just kind of tiresome in many ways. That's not to say there aren't substantive distinctions there, but um, I don't know, things about that, and this is not one to one, but things about it remind me somewhat of a little bit of the like Trotskyist versus Stalinist thing. Like at a certain point, Trotskyists are almost keeping anti-Stalin propaganda alive. No one else is talking about this anymore, so I don't know. Continuing, so don't feed the troll. That would be my advice. I found my settings panel. I'll have to take a minute to actually get into that, but I want to answer some more questions first. Um, what else do we have going on? Can black people be white supremacist? There's a question. Um, I mean, people who are from groups who experience special oppression can internalize that, can internalize elements of the culture that is antagonistic to them. So, like, for example, there's feminist criticism of even women using the term bitch because it's originally a misogynist term, and if it's not reclaiming, then it's just sort of internalized misogyny. Um, Aside from that, I mean, can individual black people support white supremacist efforts? Yeah, I mean, yes. So, I mean, individual people from oppressed groups can participate in the structural oppression of said group. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, that's a very simple question there. If you have an example, maybe that we could talk about, but that would be my basic answer. Life on the couch. Hi, social. Okay, we are. Are we talking about whether to support the truckers or not as leftists? That is a general topic, although we're not really debating it. The answer is no. This is an astroturfed right wing movement, so I would say it's fairly decided from my point of view. I did like 3 videos on this already. I don't mean to be dismissive of your comment. Just no, I don't really see that as being debatable at this point. So, and have elaborated on the reasons for that at length elsewhere. I am not this person is replying to Dirk Richter saying, talking about COVID at universities. We can't socially distance in classrooms. Dining halls are all buffet style, so everyone touches all the serving stuff. And they don't even require masks unless you absolutely have to, but that's determined by the wearer. Yeah, it's fucked. Also, if you look at, still a majority of the population supports mask mandates. The last poll I saw was 56%. And that support goes down for wealthier people and for white people. So people of color and lower income people more likely to support mask mandates. This is a proletarian issue. Absolutely, it's a class issue, and we need mask mandates. And if you want to try organizing on your campus for it, I don't know, if you're in a very elite, expensive college that is, petty bourgeois. I don't know, but I don't know. You might try it. There's nothing. I don't see downsides necessarily. Let's see. Rose Red Flechette says, I can't fathom being in school in a time like this. Yeah, same. I actually was going to do a program myself this semester, and I had to drop out because I didn't. It was the middle of Omicron. There's like a million cases a day. I was like, yeah, I can't do this. So, let's see. All right. I just need to take a minute to fix the chat. Hang on one second. It'll be quiet for a minute or two. All right, figured out how to kick the troll. There we go. Learning Twitch one day at a time. So yeah, just don't feed the troll. There's no point to that. All right, see, because now I have to scroll through all these comments of people fighting with the troll, so it really doesn't help me either. But the troll is gone. Let's see. I am not this person. Well, if our professors try to keep us at home and such, they will be fired. That's a mess, and various governments. I mean, it tends to be more the Republican state governments are trying to ban. They're trying to preemptively ban mask mandates. Terrible situation. So, all right, I have to scroll through all the comments of people fighting with the troll. Dirk Richter says, same boat. My job lets anybody with a face covering come in to order, and it fucking sucks. And yeah, cloth doesn't work as well as N95s, etc. It's better and it does something, but it's, especially if they're standing in there for 5 or 10 minutes, it's no good. The aerosolized virus particles get out there. All right. Adiob says, I finally caught your live stream. Welcome to the live stream. We've got 29 people watching. And Young Parenti says facts. I'm not sure which what that was in reference to, but yes, facts are being spoken. Um, let's see. Do I need mods for chat? No, I don't think so. There's only 29 people in here. I just don't. I've never used the Twitch mod controls. Although I just found the band list, so we're good for now. Let's see. Adiov. It's refreshing to listen to a real socialist like you and Jason Unruh. Yeah, I mean, we're trying. There's a lot of just edgelords who call themselves Marxists and don't really know what it is. I'm not saying I'm the world's best socialist, but I am trying, and I'm trying to, center the channel on people like Lenin and Marx and Engels and Stalin and Mao and, the many other major socialists who have made contributions to this movement. And that's the jumping off point for my commentary. I got tired of people like Kyle Kalinske in Humanist Report and Cenk Uygur being, quote, the voices of the left. And I know I'm not the first Marxist to start a channel, but I wanted to contribute to that because I am interested in what's going on in the world and class struggle and everything. And I think that, I just felt about 2 years ago it was time to get off my ass and finally, after many years of being somebody who would argue with people in comments and various things, I was like, let me just go launch this show and see what we can do. So it seems to be going pretty well. It's finding an audience. The YouTube is up at over 6,400 subscribers, so that's been really good growth. It's growing between 550 and 600 subs a month right now, which is awesome. So I think we will hit 10,000 by the end of the year, and from that point, the channel does kind of grow on its own, and anyway, it's really good to see. Let's see. I am not this person says, I still think you should do a review of the debate with Haas, Logo versus Keith Woods, and that other guy. I think, I appreciate the suggestion, obviously. I think, I've probably done my last video on Infracell. When you come out and say something like, we are in socialism now, this is beyond ridicule. I mean, it's just, that was, I think, my final word on the matter. I don't think that this is someone really anybody takes seriously anymore in terms of, is there any sincere question, is this person a socialist or not? They're clearly not. So, I think the world has moved on, and I think that the lessons have been learned there for anybody who is actually going to be inclined to learn them. So I think, at a certain point, once the line has been drawn, then, it doesn't need to, have time and resources spent to keep redrawing it, I guess is my point. Let's see. Rose Red Flechette, yeah, mod somebody so we can, okay. Well, again, there's 28 people in here, so I think I can probably handle it myself. Let's see. I'm not this person says, I use a KN95, but the school only provides those blue surgical ones and allows a scarf as a mask. So, yeah, if you're going to use a surgical mask, double mask, put another mask over it. Like, if you put a cloth mask or even a scarf over the surgical mask, it's going to help to, create more of a barrier. The problem with the surgical mask is a lot of the aerosol stuff blows out the sides. So it's better than nothing, and if you use a cloth one over it to hold it in place, it can be somewhat more effective, but, again, the N95K and 95 much better. Charmander says, what is revisionism? Okay, good general question. Revisionism, I kind of said in the beginning, I don't like the term revisionism because it's a little bit like the Marxist version of calling someone un-American. It can be a very general term. And sometimes you see it used in ways that I think are overly broad, where a more specific criticism would make more sense. That said, what does it mean? It means revising what Marx and Engels wrote. So, for example, saying that Marx and Engels weren't for revolution, but you could just sort of reform your way out of capitalism. So, reformism would be a basic departure, and trying to call that Marxist is a revision of what Marx and Engels were writing about and talking about, and kind of the basis of all this stuff. So it means going back and revising the foundations of scientific socialism to be what they are not. Now, there are different currents within revisionism. For example, many people considered post-Stalin USSR to get off of the basic ML track and to be revisionist and to depart from the general mission of Marxism. Others disagreed. And, then, for example, Hoxha in Albania at some point considered China to be revisionist. And so it's kind of this, I think that there are legitimate criticisms of various socialist countries and movements. Sometimes I think that the debate over who's revisionist gets down to somewhat unrealistic standards in some cases, and it's not always helpful. Then again, sometimes it is. We'll do more of a section on this, talking about Maoism, because this is one of the currents that you find there. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful as a starter answer. And I'll just add for anybody, if you're confused about basic terms of Marxism, go to Marxists.org, and right on the front page there's an encyclopedia link. They have a glossary both of terms and of people, of names. So I may do a video on that at some point where we can just discuss Marxist vocabulary. I keep thinking about it and then just something else comes up. But I'm thinking of just doing like a glossary of Marxist terms for that reason. So pause for a moment while I just take a sip of my drink here. I'll be right back. All right. Elephants on Coke found the question or comment that they wanted me to respond to. Here it is, part 1. I'm reading Mobo Gao's The Battle for China's Past, which I think is a great book examining the Cultural Revolution. But it's sort of a low-level examination and rebuttal of Chinese and Western revisionist historical accounts of the Cultural Revolution. This is great, but for someone who knows little about China's history, a high-level understanding of the timeline and major events of the Cultural Revolution would be helpful to fill in the gaps. So my question is, do I have any good book or podcast documentary recommendations which examine the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, or CCP-led China under Mao in general? And my answer is, right now, nothing is coming to mind. If anybody in the chat has a recommendation, then go for it. Otherwise, no, I'm honestly blanking at the moment, so I'll get back to you on that. Adiob says, I'm going to be a teacher, but thank you for the question, by the way. It's a good question, and that would be a good resource to have at hand. What I do on the channel, I'm going at the particular pace that I'm going at, covering various topics in depth, and I just haven't kind of gotten to that, so I have not done like a big internet culling of that, and nothing's really coming to mind. Anyway, I mean, Jason Unruh has stuff on his channel about that. I don't know if it's like the very first thing that I would recommend. I know he has stuff about that though. But is it the particular take that you're looking for? I don't know, but I know that that's there. Anyway, Adiov, I'm going to be a teacher next week. I'm terrified of the stupid boards of education. I don't even know what to do. First of all, solidarity. I feel you on that. I enjoy teaching, and have taught in various capacities. The education system is hard to deal with. I like the active teaching. That's why I'm doing this channel. But dealing with the politics is fairly insane. The level of reaction can be off the charts. So anyway, if you don't mind saying, what state are you in? So let's see. Rose Red Flechette, what role do I think artists and musicians play leading up to and after a revolution? Well, I don't know if I have like a thesis prepared on this, but artists and musicians can play an important part. Art is a powerful instrument for winning hearts and minds or just affecting people. We see it in memes today. So I mean, a lot of these ideas are being spread through visual art, not just in like memes per se, but just other things that I guess get called memes now. That get thrown together. S4A started out as a meme shit posting page, and then I just kind of did what I'm doing now to go into greater depth with it. But I mean, I think a potentially very great part, propaganda in the form of visual art or songs can be really important. I haven't seen it lately as much with music. I mean, there's sort of the like punk underground. This is not necessarily music that is like widely popular, though. A lot of it's designed to be like borderline unlistenable. But I mean, you can find examples though of songs that contain some kind of a class struggle message. I mean, actually, look at a lot of hip hop. So, for example, I'm thinking more of like pop music, but this is also, anyway. Things about class struggle can be hugely important. How revolutionary you make it is another question. So, anyway, a huge role. I don't know beyond that more specifically what you'd be asking about. Adi, I have a question. Do you know any Arab socialists? If no, I suggest checking Dufar Rebellion and Lebanon Communist Party. Okay. I mean, I don't personally that I know of off the top of my head, but good suggestion. Let's see. I'm not this person says, I'm not joking when I say that the majority of my family has perished since 2019 due to COVID. I'm sorry. That's really terrible. I mean, if you don't mind saying, like, were these more elderly people or, anyway, it's terrible. A lot of my closer family has not. However, I do have friends where that's the case, and I don't know. For me, this just kind of hits an emotional spot where it's just like, what is this country doing? I mean, we can look at the class reasons for it, but why are people not standing up to this? It makes no sense to me. I don't know. That just really strikes a nerve with me. I get kind of speechless just looking at what the U.S. is, and it's not just the U.S., but like what everywhere is putting up with right now. I mean, I'm somebody with a channel on YouTube with like 6,000 subs, and I'm trying to put out the message that I can. I'm not the mass media, so like I can't be out there influencing like hundreds of thousands of people at a time. If I could, I would, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm really sorry to hear that. I wish I could do more, but that's a lot of it's coming from the absence of kind of general mass action. So anyway, Big Boy Red 1234 says what they're trying to do is getting Ukraine into NATO. It's been actually quite lame. I'm old enough to remember the bullshit leading up to Iraq, me too, which was sold way more effectively, at least to Americans, who are the most brainwashed people on the planet. I would also put Israel up there in the running for most brainwashed people on the planet, but definitely the U.S. has been number one or number two for a long time. And yeah, the getting Ukraine into NATO thing. I mean, to me, it seems like, as I've said before, they're massively threatened by China. China has said it's not trying to be a new United States, it's just trying to be successful. And the United States is in severe decline at the same time. So the United States and its allies are massively threatened by China and possibly by Russia if there's a partnership more with China between Russia than with the EU. And they want to disrupt Chinese-led development, which is not going to be the kind of IMF debt traps that the West has been doing for decades now. And they're really threatened at Chinese-led development, breaking that up. The Belt and Road running through Central Asia to Europe and to Africa and the Middle East is a part of that. So, trying to turn the revolts in Kazakhstan into some kind of like a neoliberal color revolution, that would be very disruptive, fomenting this kind of chaos elsewhere along the Russian border, also helpful to that. So that's what I see. They can't really touch China directly, so they're trying to do this instead. So anyway, all right. Somebody says Hakim. No, I'm talking about the early ones in the 20s and Cold War era. Yes, Hakim is a socialist in Iraq. So I'm assuming we all know about Hakim. When I said no, I don't know any. Yes, we all know about Hakim. Probably the question was more about large historical movements. We will be doing Gaddafi's Green Book, for example, and some other pieces from Arab national movements that were friendly to socialism and anti-imperialist and things like that on the channel. I'm one person running this on a part-time basis. I haven't been able to get to all of it yet. What else do we have? Can a socialist system have presidential elections or multiple parties? Yes, it can. If you'd like to, so the Marxist-Leninist method is one method. But anyway, if you want to elaborate on that, maybe I could say a little bit more about it. So, God, all of these. Before I ban the troll, so many of these comments are just to the troll. Okay. Karotorak says, hi. Karotorak? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Hello to you too. Let's see. If I'm a little bit tired today, I am. If I sound a little bit tired, it's because I am. Like I said, I had kind of a bad cold earlier this week. I'm still not entirely over it. So some of these, I'm like reading the comments, and I'm just like, yep. I don't always have the mental wherewithal to like dig into these questions right now. Let's see. Sorting through all of the comments to the troll, and probably missing some other comments in the meantime, in the process, Let's see. Okay, Dirk Richter says, where did it go? It just disappeared. There it is. On the labor union question, my exact fears about unionizing is the capitalist glass ceiling of labor unions, making it trickier when the opportunity comes for full revolution. So, yeah, some of the labor unions definitely collude with the capitalist class to just sort of keep the workers bought off. The question is, can we out-organize it? I feel like, this is not an attack on you. It's just the Western left in general. I feel like there's just so many excuses that are leveled and so little effort put into the main thing, which is organizing for socialism. Like, yeah, there are barriers, there are obstacles. There never weren't, I guess, is the thing. And yet some movements have found ways around these and others haven't. I don't know. I guess I'm hitting a point of fatigue, I guess, just on that question, is just like, and not your question specifically, but every sort of manifestation of this is like, oh, well, you think that we should protest, but capitalists have police forces. It's like, yes, I was aware of that when I suggested it, in fact. So, the question of, is there the basis for, some sort of reconstitution of the labor movement? Yes. Will capitalists try to control it? Obviously. I was aware of that when I suggested it. So I guess the thing is, like, I don't know, do people want to keep being passive and allowing the capitalists to do that, or don't you? Because it's not about me getting this question right as an individual. It's about the movement as as masses of people getting it right and taking the correct steps to counter it and to outmaneuver it. So yeah, these things aren't like just getting a good score on a test because you formulated the correct position. If you can't apply it in reality, nothing's going to happen. And that's what's been happening. Nothing. So anyway, I'm not trying to be dismissive of the question. I just feel like the overall state of the movement, is very frustrating in that regard. I've found it frustrating. So, what do we have? There's a lot of Haas and Moppin trolls here. I just see one, and I banned them. Eliav, it has been amazing being here, S4A. Keep it going. Thank you. Thoughts on Xi Jinping? So, I appreciate the question, Charmander, but these are like very, very, very general questions. It's like, people like thoughts on China last time. It's like, it's a large country in Asia. I don't know. If there's something more specific, maybe I could dig into that. So let's see. Imagine watching Infracell for 5+ hours a day. Your brain would be mush. Yeah, I don't know how people do it. I mean, streaming in general. I should mention, because I haven't mentioned it up to this point, I'm not actually that big on streaming at all. I think it tends to be very shallow because, you oftentimes don't have time to dig into resources if you haven't prepared them ahead of time and whatever. I'm really just doing this to unlock the Twitch affiliate status, so I need to do at least a few more streams for that, and probably will keep doing them on some sort of basis after that. But yeah, I'm just trying to get affiliates so I can upload my audiobooks. They don't let you do that until you've streamed for a certain amount and become an affiliate. But yeah, the people who like base their thing around streaming all the time and don't necessarily bring in prepared materials to the stream, I mean, it's garbage a lot of the time. It's just people talking to talk. And I mean, that's what I'm doing now, but at least I'm being honest. I'm just trying to make affiliate. I think, like, for example, trying to be a Twitch partner, you have to stream like 25 days out of the month. Nobody has that much quality to say. So yeah, I think, and specifically somebody like Infracell, yeah, your brain would definitely be mushed listening to that. So what else do we have? Not a Maoist, but it seems many MLs are much more critical of the Shining Path than the Soviet Union and Lenin. I mean, that's possible and maybe also fair, because the Soviet Union and Lenin were massive world leaders and the Shining Path were not. So, I don't know, I mean, and as far as the Shining Path trying to be like the way forward, and it really didn't become a global leader, I mean, I think that deserves criticism. So, and their struggle against fascist dictatorship can still be learned from despite mistakes. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. But I mean, I think that might be why some of the, the criticism is unequal there. Continuing, related to my last question, and since you've mentioned in the past being passionate about music, I don't really want to get into my musical tastes. It's just more personal than I think anything on this channel really needs to be. Scrolling through a bunch of comments. I plugged the stream in a bunch of Facebook groups. Thank you. Yeah, I'll never be back on Facebook again. That was where all this started, and I think that they started cracking down on them in 2020 and 2021. But there used to be some really huge left-wing Facebook groups, like what was it? Comrade AOC's Dank Meme Stash, which was not actually like a pro AOC thing. It just looked like that, but then was actually socialist. And that was the gimmick. Yeah, it was like the Bernie Sanders Dank Meme Stash. I mean, you could go in there and put in the link for a Lenin audiobook, and that was how I got a lot of the early audience for S4A. People were hungry for it. So yeah, the Facebook used to be good for that. But around the same time that S4A got kicked off of Facebook, I noticed a lot of the large left groups were getting shut down and censored and all kinds of stuff. So it's bad. Facebook leans far right. Let's see. All right, if people could stop arguing in the comments, it's just fucking annoying to read, honestly. So, and it's not even a troll. It's just like, anyway, I'm looking for questions and not seeing. There's a lot of noise to signal in the ratio here. So, am I learning the Chinese language? I keep thinking about it. I keep watching. Actually, so I just tweeted yesterday. I said, "Does anybody have good resources for learning standard Chinese?" And there were very few. There was a lot of interest. It got a lot of likes and retweets, but there were very few solid suggestions other than like immersion. Well, I can't afford immersion right now. I am stuck in the United States. So somebody did. Let me see if I can find it. They recommended a channel that looks promising. And where is it? Here it is. Let me get the name of this channel. Just gotta wait for the tab to load. Okay. Harbin Mandarin. I'll post a link to one of their videos in the Twitch chat if people want to check it out. But it's Harbin Mandarin. And apparently this is a very good channel. So that's what I've been told. Yes. So I am like a little bit familiar with Chinese. I'm not going to show off my like minuscule knowledge, but I have some of the foundations maybe for learning Chinese, but very few. But yeah, that is kind of a goal. Actually, I think if you're going to learn any language right now, it'd be definitely a good one to learn. All right. Scrolling through a bunch of pointless argument in the chat. Thoughts on being a guest on B2 News or fault lines on Sputnik Radio? Well, that was from Dan. Thank you, Dan. Neither of them have invited me on. So I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I happen to like BT News a lot. I don't think that I'm the kind of person that they would have on. What I do at S4A is general education on Marxism and then applying that to some current events commentary to sort of model for people how to take Marxist commentary and apply it in your life. That's pretty much what I'm trying to do. Beyond that, I tell people to join organizations, and I'm not going to make that decision for you as far as which organizations to join. What BT News usually does is they'll have somebody on who is an expert in some particular field, and they'll have them on to talk about that in a way that pertains to class struggle, class issues. I like BT News a lot, and it is one of the things, if I'm going to flip on some left tube, that's one of the things that I'm, it's in my top 10, probably top 5 even. But yeah, I don't think in my capacity as S4A that I'm somebody that, I'm not the type of person that they, this isn't the type of thing that they have on as a guest usually. So unless, I happen to be somewhere and start reporting on something that is, really takes off, maybe then. But they tend to have more of like expert guests rather than just showcasing other, podcasters. Because they're not really like a podcast in the general sense. Like I'm a rando who streams stuff I find interesting. They're trying to be more of like a news show proper. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be on that level. It's like I would see them as more comparable to like a Democracy Now, where they're trying to be like a news show. I do news, but that's not the only thing I do. I do a lot of opinion, and also the audiobooks. That's like 50% of the channel probably. Anyway, I beat that one to death. Fault lines on Sputnik Radio, again, haven't been invited on, and not sure that I would be. I would take no offense to that at all. I don't know. I don't know if I was that show. I don't know why I would have me on. That said, I deliberately didn't do any guest appearances anywhere in 2021 after just having some weird experiences in 2020. Actually, it wasn't even so much about specific weird experiences as much as, I started becoming aware towards the end of 2020 about the whole, you know, what eventually became the patriotic or nationalistic socialist thing. I was starting to become aware, which I really wasn't prior to. I was like, hey, let's read some Marx and do commentary. I didn't really know what was going on in this realm. I didn't realize that the like right wing quote communist thing was a thing. And I decided in 2021 that, you know what, I'm just going to focus on building the channel and not do crossovers, because I don't want to do crossovers and then just have it get weird. Plus, I'll be honest, I don't really like what we're doing right now. Not me and you, but I mean live streaming. I don't really enjoy it. For me, it's honestly kind of weird just being the center of attention of this whole discussion. Everybody's listening to me. I don't think everybody should just listen to me, actually. So, I'm putting resources online that I hope people find useful, but I'm not really am not trying to be like, I am going to be the freaking leadership of this thing or whatever. I'm trying to do good analysis, helpful commentary, and to teach people at least the basics of Marxism, and hopefully a lot more than that too. But yeah, anyway, it's honestly uncomfortable for me. But that said, I have had some invitations to go onto various shows that I don't think I would have a problem going on. I just wasn't as a matter of course. Like, I was just like, you know what, I'm taking 2021 off. But I may start doing that later this year. But it's, part of it is, if I have a thought on something, odds are I will share it on my own. When you go on shows, people ask you all kinds of stuff, and I don't even know if I feel like talking about a lot of the stuff. So, or is it important or whatever? And I don't know. So for me, depending on like where my overall just sort of like patience level is, I guess, I may or may not even be in the mood for that. Like I for even right now, I've set in this quest for Twitch affiliate like Tuesday and Saturday as times where I'm going to do like a stream. They're scheduled, and even that, I'm like, this is kind of a lot. So I don't know. For me, I'd kind of rather just be making videos, but that's me. Elephants on Coke says, that's what's funny about people who want change complaining about revolutions being violent, as if the police get tired of beating peaceful protesters up and then give up and go home, and that's when people gain freedom and democracy. Yeah, you're correct. Definitely not what happens. Anyway, there's a comment to somebody else. I'm going to skip that one. And looking for another question to me. Okay. A comrade on Twitter, JJ Demon, is a communist rapper, and his latest album, Ghost Gun Red Menace, is not only a solid rap album outside of the subject matter, it's also a great piece of communist propaganda. Okay, I am unfamiliar with that artist, so it's so hard to keep up with music in general. I mean, like, in the SoundCloud era and Bandcamp and stuff, like, and Spotify, like, it's so easy to self-publish music. There's so many people popping up, and it is, I find just hard to keep up with all the stuff coming out. I mean, if I was younger, I probably have at least 10 years, writing down JJ Demon, I probably have at least 10 years on a lot of the people here. It's like I had my stuff that I found back when there was a functioning music industry, which there isn't anymore. I mean, in the 2000s and 2010s, the music industry was kind of like, at least the old music industry was kind of wiped out. And this kind of happened in like the movie industry too. Like anything that could be shared on like Napster and torrents and stuff like that, the entire business model and the distribution model got like totally changed. And I feel like it's starting to find its footing again. But Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I find most of my music today through like YouTube and then occasionally from other places, but um, my brain has enough music in it at this point, I guess, that like finding entirely new stuff is not like the highest priority for me because I'm already aware of tons of stuff that I enjoy. So yeah. Anyway, I sympathize with people, I guess, trying to find new music today because it's it's kind of a mess. I mean, there was always before like kind of an underground music industry. Now it's all just kind of like a big blur, I think. Anyway, looking at a couple of other comments here. Any predictions on the future of capitalism, robotization, or globalization and what it would mean for international geopolitics? For example, will there be a US EU split? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know why there would be. Excuse me. Unless the EU started allying more with China. But then at that point, I don't know who the US would be like leaning on at that point. So if that were to happen, I would imagine there to be more of a split within the EU. So I don't, but that's not standing out to me as like a strong possibility. But I think I think that there would probably need to be a major realignment for that to happen. Which again, China's Belt and Road international development and just the growth of the growth in general of China becoming like a world leader economically, that's going to shake a lot of things up. And how the current top dogs, the U.S. and allies, respond to that, there could be a more peaceful shakeup, though that's not really the U.S.'s MO. If there's a World War III type shakeup, it could be the last clash of imperialists, and that really could be not just the beginning of the end of imperialism. I think that we're probably in that now, but more like halfway along the end of imperialism. I think that would clear a lot of ground for more of a socialist future. Capitalism's going to go down hard, though. I think that much seems to be clear. Also, question: what changes must be made to traditional Marxism-Leninism to build socialism in the 21st century? I'm not even going to. I'm kind of tired, and I'm not even going to attempt that question right now. It's not a bad question, but for real, I just like I'm not going to sit down and try to hash that one out right now. But actually, getting back to the earlier thing, I focused on the U.S.-EU split to the exclusion of anything else. So, predictions on the future of capitalism, robotization, or globalization. I mean, globalization is pretty extensive already so far. So I think kind of what you see is what you get. Again, looking at China's Belt and Road project, they're trying to do alternative infrastructure, which is not nearly as, like, I hesitate even to use as predatory as the U.S. imperialist model of development because I don't even think that they should really be compared at all. They're similar in that the U.S. does, quote, something it calls development, but I don't think that it's really comparable. I think that imperialism is going to really try to stop that, although I think that their tools in their toolbox for stopping it are getting fewer and fewer all the time as the U.S. look at what's happening with the pandemic, look at what's happening with the U.S. economy. It's not good. And I think that they're getting more and more desperate. If there is a World War III scenario, probably the U.S.-led faction would lose, and this would pave the way for even greater shifts away from imperialism. So, anyway, how a socialist nation must control the media in the age of the internet and globalization. I don't have strong expertise on that, so I'm really not going to attempt that one either. China obviously is implementing controls on the media, and certain websites are banned. Some can still be accessed through VPNs, some can't, at least not reliably or consistently. So yeah, I mean, but like Google, for example, I'm pretty sure just is the NSA at this point. So there's definitely overlap there. So this is why we as a socialist movement can't just keep hanging out and criticizing capitalism or having witty takes. We have to fucking organize, because the longer capitalism hangs around, the longer that we're all in danger. So anyway. Haggard Blaggard says, I really enjoy your channel. It's good to have an actual socialist perspective on events in the U.S. Thank you. I try. I don't think I'm the final word in anything, but thanks for considering my point of view. What else do we have? Extremophile Elite says Don Raid, apostrophe Y apostrophe D. Don Raid is a communist folk black metal band from England. I really love their work, but I just prefer metalcore and don't care about the political message as long as they aren't fascist. Yeah, I'm not into. I find black metal pretty goofy, but that's me. But again, this is personal, and I actually think like the whole just metalization of guitar-based music kind of sucks, to be honest. This has nothing to do with socialism at all, but I think like in the quest to just get heavier and harder, it just kind of like went too far and became like supremely unmusical, stereotypical, and just utterly routine and predictable. So yeah, like I think metal has gone too far, generally speaking, but again, it has nothing to do with socialism. Dirk Richter, favorite labor anthems. Hallelujah, I'm a Bum. I mean, it's a really old one, but I don't know. I'm not feeling my sharpest today, so I'm trying to think of like, I don't know, what do I listen to that is a labor anthem. I don't know. Pass. I'm sure some other day I could come up with something for you, but not so much. Somebody else says, I like Bamboo a lot. MLM LA rapper. All right, that's good. I had not heard of Bamboo before. And it's not like I'm living under a rock either. Just typing Bamboo. And Dawn Raid. It's not like I'm living under a rock. I spend a decent amount of time accessing information online and, looking at record labels and stuff. It's just like the odds of like finding any particular artist, it's like a needle in a haystack. Rose Red Flechette says, it sucks that a lot of revolutionary music is more underground, but it's kind of necessary since capitalism won't touch it. The more obscure and weird you go, the more likely you are to bump into openly leftist stuff. Yeah, I guess that's what I was kind of saying before about like, in the 70s and 80s, you could find a lot of anti-capitalist like punk music, but it was almost deliberately designed to be unlistenable per bourgeois taste. But then I think arguably it also went further even than just proletarian tastes. It just became sort of extreme. I mean, but this is also gets into just conversations about cultivating an appreciation for the arts, and how widespread is that? Are proletarian students like exposed, like are we taught how to appreciate art and music? Not that you need to be formally taught to have like a general appreciation of music, but to know different movements within art and music, and to know what's out there and all that kind of stuff, like that does take like a little bit of book study or like reading at least. I mean, even if you're just going on like discogs.org or something, like it takes a little while to just poke through stuff. I mean, back in the day, it would be like hanging out in a record store and like spending a few hours going through the stacks and being like, oh, what's this? Or like, sending in a self-addressed stamped envelope to like a record company and getting their catalog or something like that. It's in a way easier to do that now because you just like subscribe online. But there's such information overload too that the attachments don't always run as deep, and the projects are sometimes more superficial because there's more vanity publishing, etc. So I don't know. Low Key is great, relatively mainstream and very radical. All right, making a note. Somebody say I was looking for a Green Book audiobook that wasn't a robot voice. Yeah, that will be coming up eventually, for sure. Caro Torak says China has 28 parties. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at as far as like, um, can you have multiple parties in a socialist system? Yes. So Rose Red Flechette said, I mentioned this in one of the YouTube comments, but for any fans of industrial or electronic music, SKET, SKET, as an acronym with periods, is pretty openly communist in message and imagery. They even have a USSR-themed concept album and another about U.S. war crimes. Okay. SKET. And I do remember that comment. I'm writing it down on my list here. Am I not allowed to do audiobooks of Michael Parenti because of copyright reasons? Or is there some other reason why I haven't done them? I am actually in the process of recording Black Shirts and Reds. However, yes, you're correct. I'm trying to stay away from things that are more recent because of copyright. That's just the last thing I need, is to have like a nice channel full of, public domain audiobooks and then get like strikes for that. I do see other people doing it. I think it's still probably underground enough. Plus, hopefully, Parenti's publisher is not going to be like, no, we control the rights. You buy a book, you filthy commie scum. Like, I'm hoping, but yeah, that's definitely part of it. Also, I'm trying to do more primary sources. Also, like a lot of people have read Parenti. I'm trying to get into the stuff, the primary sources of like basic theory that people just need to get out there more. I'm not saying more people shouldn't read Parenti. Just saying, like, if you talk to somebody, that's one of the things they're most likely to have read. So, hence again, it hasn't been a priority. Whereas, how many people truly went cover to cover on What Is to Be Done? How many people truly went cover to cover on State and Revolution? I'm trying to make it easy for people to do that, to learn the basics, so that when you get to a Parenti, you know what the hell you're talking about. So that's kind of the idea. I'm not averse to it. It's just, it just hasn't been top priority. Remember, I've only been doing this channel for 2 years on a part-time basis, and trying to negotiate all these political, dramas of like that pop up in the like online socialist world and everything. So it's kind of a lot. This is as good a time as any to give a shout out to the patrons, some of whom, again, are here in the chat. Because that support has allowed me to spend more time on this. But even on that basis, I could be doing this 24/7 and just still wouldn't be able to get to a lot of the stuff I want to do. So I'm going as fast as I can. And some of this is my own frustration. I wish I could do more. I'd put up 4 audiobooks a day if I could. I can't. So, and if I could, I'd probably be done with a lot of the backlog and probably have 3 Parentis up by now. Who knows? But yeah, anyway, if I sound frustrated, I'm not really frustrated with you at all. I have such a backlog, you have no idea. Fortunately, like, we are getting through it, but it's such a backlog, I can't even tell you. Like, the whole Patsock thing, that came up like 3 or 4 months ago. I pulled a bunch of readings I wanted to do, but I have a lot of other stuff that I'm trying to do too. I'm finally getting to critical remarks on the national question and other major Marx and Stalin works on the national question now. So it's frustrating for me. I really wish I could snap my fingers and have it done. But for every hour that winds up on the channel, picture 4 or 5 hours behind the scenes, at least 3 or 4 hours. So it's a significant time commitment. I don't also like just read through the audiobook straight. As you can hear when I'm talking now, I will, misspeak, and I have to like find the part, that's you can't hear on audio transition. I'm not in the middle of an inhalation or something. Put the cursor there, start recording there again. Then my nose starts itching and I have to sneeze and like, just all that stuff. So it's like, or like randomly my mouth will make like a loud mouth noise. So the recording process alone is like 2 or 3 times the actual audio length minimum. And of course, I can't just sit there for like 5 hours straight. Like I'm doing this, couple hours at a time at most. And then on top of that, there's the whole like putting the video, well, you got to export the audio file, then plop it into the video editor, then edit the video together, then export the video. Sometimes that takes 45 minutes just to like print the file. Then I gotta like upload it, and then I gotta promote it, and anyway, so it's a lot of work. So I always appreciate suggestions. Just as for right now, I've got three major sections I'm trying to do. Well, actually, I got three major sections I'm trying to do, and that's after getting caught up on the current thing. I'm still trying to finish the basic Marxism-Leninism study guide. I'm currently recording entry number 20 out of 26. However, entry number 25 is capital, which is, I've seen audiobooks of that online, and they're about 10 or 11 hours. So I'm going to be doing that one chapter by chapter, and there's about 24 chapters. So basically, I've been doing the channel for 24 months now, 25 months, and I've done 19 of those. So basically, I'm averaging about 0.95, I don't know what it is, 0.93 of the basic Marxism-Leninism study guide entries per month. Because there's so many other things to talk about. Also, like, you read one of the main entries, and it will refer you to like 7 or 8 other works in the footnotes. I try to follow up with those too. So anyway, it's just a lot of work. But anyway, after I get done with the current slate of stuff, I want to do a big early Marx and Engels thing, because I haven't done enough of that. I want to do Marx and Engels, more of their major works that aren't covered on the basic ML study guide. Then I want to do a major like Trotsky, Stalin, Bukharin, post-Lenin, early USSR thing, basically late 20s and 1930s USSR. Then I want to do more of the like Maoist and more national liberation stuff. So that's kind of what's coming up. I'm like hoping to get to all that this year, but who even knows? So, all right. Anyway, this is like, so what I just talked about, that is when I think of S4A, that's mainly how I think about the channel. So that's really my thought process, is like trying to plan major lesson courses. And then, of course, in the process of that, things always pop up. And then, current events pop up too. Like the Patsock thing broke out, or the trucker convoy thing broke out. And then I got to cover that, and like there goes a bunch of recording days to deal with that, because, I'm trying to do current events commentary, and I don't consider it like detracting, but the fact is, these are vigorous times in terms of current events. So, keeping up with all that, like somebody on Twitter was like, "Hey, can you comment on this Russell Brand thing? It's on the trucker convoy." And I was like, "What is that?" And then it turned into like a major thing I do like 4 videos on. So you just never know. Like, I'll sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to do XYZ now. And then boom, like 2 major, like Omicron breaks out or something. I'm like, fuck. Then I do 13 Omicron videos in a row because it's like a huge pressing concern. But then everything else takes a back seat. So it's just the way it is. But yeah, those are still, I'm sticking to that. I'm finishing up what I'm doing, the basic ML study guide, and some other readings that I kind of have on the side. And then those sort of 3 major sections, that's what I've planned, but we'll see. So anyway, Charmander, what would a socialist response to the severe mental health crisis be? I saw a recent poll showing 25% of people 18 to 25 in the U.S. have recently considered suicide. Well, a lot of that's due to the pandemic and economic crisis that we're living through. So step 1, don't have those kinds of economic crises. I read somewhere that all relationship problems are ultimately money problems. And I don't think that's entirely true, but I think a lot of it is. And, people are just hard-pressed to keep balanced. People get really desperate. There are other, like, I'm not going to do a whole exegesis on, like, mental health right now. But there are other reasons for that other than just purely situational, obviously, but or like some acute crisis kind of thing. But certainly the acute crises don't help anyone. So that's a lot of it. You're 18 to 25. You're looking at a future where the government's like, you're totally expendable. They don't care if you live or die. You have no prospect of buying a house. I mean, that's super fucking depressing. Add into that, like, when are you going to move out of your parents' house? When you're 40? I mean, it's just things that have been normal parts of the culture are no longer even realistic. I'm lucky enough that, I caught the tail end, again, being a little bit older. I got the tail end of when you could be broke in the US and not have it be like totally life destroying. But we're feeling it now. We're feeling it now. I don't know. It's a bad situation. So, I mean, what would a socialist response be? First of all, stabilize the economy. Second of all, get everybody health care. So we're talking about the U.S. in particular. People don't have access to, like, well, access. I don't want to use that word. People don't practically have access because they might have a number they can call, but they can't afford it. So first of all, get everybody health care. That would be a start. People are just untreated. And then beyond that, I mean, as far as like intergenerational stuff goes, you got to break poverty. Talking about social determinants of health. People growing up in like broken, economically desperate households where there's lots of stress about money problems and ensuing things that flow out of that. I mean, three things off the top of my head: stop the acute economic crises. Two, get everybody health care. And I would add to the get everybody health care thing also, we got a provider shortage. Make it a lot easier to go through med school or to get trained as a therapist. Making all that stuff easier, that you don't go $200,000 into debt or whatever. That would be a step towards it. But, the whole system is based around profit and trying to keep things as profitable as possible for the people that own and operate the medical system, including mental health, for profit. You need to get rid of that. And then, break the intergenerational stuff. Give people options in their life again. And, in a few generations, you will have people growing up in better households, too. So those would be some of, the three things off the top of my head. As far as the current crisis, again, the responses are also just not great. In mental health, excuse me, there's ostensibly a balance between a biopsychosocial approach, like there's biological factors, there are psychological factors, and there are sociological factors. A lot of times it's bio. Take a pill, take a pill, take a pill, and there's not enough of more of like a social work perspective on what's your living situation and everything else. So this kind of just like, did something happen in your childhood? That's a piece that's on the psychological side partly, but also just having more of evaluating the conditions, including work and everything else that people are experiencing. So you've got to some extent, change the model. It's a lot better now than it was 20 years ago, but it is still, I think, improving. Anyway, I said more on that than I was expecting to. Maybe I'm waking up a little, I don't know. Rose Red Flechette adds, piggybacking off of this, any tips for fighting both capitalism and depression simultaneously? I feel uncomfortable making suggestions on that. Beyond get a reasonable amount of exercise, because sleep, diet, exercise are foundational for your physical health, some of which will bleed into mental health. It's not everybody has a kind of exercise that they like doing or that's easy for them to do. I understand that, but trying to stay in reasonable physical shape is a step. But beyond that, I mean, depression is not a monolith. There are many different types and sources of depression, and I really do not feel comfortable talking about that in a general way at all. Having good relationships is important. Having friends that you can count on is important. Learning good communication skills so that you can make the most of your relationships is important. But people experience depression for so many different reasons, from the more acute to the more chronic. from the more biological to the more sociological, I really, really am not comfortable talking about that. Um, A. Tyler, but it's a good question. I don't think that there is a good answer I can give you in this live stream, unfortunately. A. Tyler B. Medicare for all would be a good start in terms of getting help. Yes, definitely. People are just not getting fucking healthcare, period. So I do think that there's a lot in terms of people's everyday life that can be done to, stay well, stay kind of healthy, eat a good diet and stuff like that, because that's the stuff that you actually do. Like, no one else is sitting there, like, feeding you, like spoon feeding you food. Those are some choices that you actually make, or like, taking care of your sleep schedule and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of people, anxiety is also massively common along with depression. It's one of the most prevalent problems in terms of mental health. And that can really fuck up people's sleep. So, I mean, these things can kind of, be self-reinforcing negatively. But yeah, getting people healthcare, getting more people in front of trained professionals, getting more trained professionals out there, and getting more people in front of them. That would be key. Have somebody who's actually like helping you with your health on a professional one-on-one basis. Having good mental health care, that would be key. Beyond that, I mean, yeah, there are things that you can do to try to keep yourself from like, morbidly ruminating on the absolute worst things that, may not be helpful for you. People have to confront their problems. Finding some kind of like a meditation may be helpful. For people who don't find it easy to sit still, as many people don't, something like a Tai Chi, or something even simpler. There's other things like Tai Chi, Qigong. These are both Chinese. They're like moving meditation. You do still focus a lot on your breath and visualizations or stilling the mind or whatever, but you're moving around a little bit doing it. That can be easy for some people to get some mental clarity and maybe, make kind of a to-do list about dealing with some problems that might be feeling overwhelming. So for some people, meditation can be a way to like clear away some of that feeling overwhelmed, and taking care of some stuff. But that's not the exact problem that everybody's facing. So I don't want to get into something that that cures your depression. Like, not at all, not even slightly. And there's plenty of problems in terms of mental health that people are suffering from that just there's not a one size fits all thing, and really do need more one-on-one care. The one thing I'll say with regard to that is there's a bunch of like online therapy stuff that is pretty new and that has kind of exploded during the pandemic. Some of that stuff is kind of cheap, although I don't know what the quality always is. So I don't know. Talking to people is, has often been helpful, particularly people actually trained in understanding and helping to resolve human suffering. So anyway, all right, moving on. Peta H. Millo says, hello. Hello to you too. Charmander's using drugs counter-revolutionary. Think Bolsheviks banning alcohol. Boy, these are the broadest questions possible. First of all, drugs is not a monolith. Okay, that's the Nancy Reagan approach to drugs. Drugs is not a monolith. Therefore, the question is not really answerable. I'm not even going to touch that one. Sorry. Rose Red Flechette, that's something else. And have I seen Prol Cults? What was that? I lost it. Documentary on fascism. No, I have had it recommended to me in the YouTube algorithm, and I also a viewer suggested it. I just have not had 2 hours to sit down and watch it. So no, I have not. Have you seen it? Is it any good? So somebody else says that all of the Prol Cult documentaries are top quality. Yeah, I remember them from Facebook. I remember some of their graphics and stuff, and I honestly haven't really watched much, so I can't say. I think I referenced one of their things, and I don't know if it was the trucker convoy first video or what it was, but I did reference one of their things recently. But I really have not watched. Like I said, I don't watch don't watch a lot of like left tube in general. Most of the time, I am actually producing content, and I actually watch very little content. So, and when I do, it's usually something totally unrelated because, just get my mind off stuff. Just taking a drink. I'll resume reading in a minute. Um, would I do some more modern texts? Yeah, some of the ones you mentioned are on the list. Like I said, so many texts, so little time. Um, Also, again, like a lot of people have read those. I'm trying to do stuff people have not read. So, I try to balance it out. Let's see. Dirk Richter says, any. Oh. Oh, okay. So that was just a repost of an earlier question that I have answered by now. Let's see. Spider said they had stumped me on postmodernism. Still don't really get it. I guess you're talking about Prol Cult on postmodernism. I tend to hate postmodernism. I think that a lot of postmodernism in general is just kind of anti-communist. I mean, the very concept of like we're against the narrative of general social progress, I think is anti-socialist in and of itself, anti-Marxist. And I mean, they make a few points about, complicating truths or whatever. Maybe within bourgeois thought, this is something of an improvement, but by and large, I can't stand postmodernism. Again, there's some interesting things like talking about. They do too much on subjectivity, but talking about the body, I mean, bringing that into it. Although you can find this, I think almost every topic that it tries to claim as new, it's somewhere in Marxism already. So I don't really know that it's necessarily like a postmodernist innovation. But I generally, when I did study some postmodernism, I found it very frustrating. What is postmodernism is the question. So, what is postmodernism? Well, you know what? I'm not going to be able to give you a definition right now off that's any different from if you go and look it up on Wikipedia. I just gave you my thoughts about it. As far as what it is, I don't feel like running through it. Just look it up on Wikipedia. That's what they tell you is going to be the same as what I tell you. So, it's a movement. Yeah, again, I think I've given about as much as I feel like giving on that. Am I planning on doing any hate readings like on right-wing or liberal authors? No, not really, because I really try hard to moderate. I'm trying to keep a good audience of people who are sincerely interested in learning socialism. I find that when you do stuff like that, you wind up just attracting the audience of those people, and I don't want to do that. I had considered, in as part of like the anti-fascist playlist that I have up on the channel, Understanding Fascism and Right-Wing Movements playlist, I had considered doing some right-wing stuff, and then I realized, no, then I'm just going to wind up with a bunch of fash in the comments because that's what they're looking for online. So, no, it's a good idea. I had thought of that myself, and then I quickly realized that practically speaking, in terms of the community, it would not be good. So I tend to put criticisms of that more into like current events where you're putting it into an overall context of a very clearly, unpalatable for them anti-fascist message. So, although, I guess the closest I've come, I did do a partial reading of the Libertarian Party platform, I think, from 1972. So I've done like a little bit of dabbling, but generally I try to stay away from it. Good idea, though. Let's see what else. So we were talking about. Anyway, I'm just going to skip that. Since China does not have the military or financial dominance like the U.S. has, The main way China can get their investment value is from these projects actually succeeding. Yeah, you know, earning an honest buck, like actually forming cooperative partnerships that rather than just fucking holding countries at gunpoint. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually partnering to develop the world on a non-exploitative basis. Imagine that. Imagine that. And the U.S. is infuriated. They're outraged that anyone would have the audacity to do that on a worldwide scale. Just the audacity. Haggard Blaggard says, any thoughts on pre-industrial proto-socialist movements such as the Diggers? Any lessons to be learned? I would say if there are lessons to be learned, Marx and Engels already learned them. And so you can get most of that just by reading Marx and Engels, because Marx and Engels did not, as you point out, they did not invent the concept of socialism. What they did was they improved it. They basically went through and ruthlessly critiqued all the existing socialist movements and, identified all the utopianism and idealism. And they created a product which took all of those earlier things. And I think you're talking specifically about, so I'm familiar with the Diggers. Weren't they from like the 1600s or something, like really early? I mean, the lesson to be learned there, I think, is just that resistance has gone on for a long time. But like I said, Marx and Engels did consider all the, if you will, pre-Marxist socialist and proto-socialist movements. Marx talked a lot. Because you're talking about the mid-19th century, 1840s, 1850s, and on. I mean, there was stuff already happening in the 1820s and 30s and things. Marx and Engels, I would say, went through that to my satisfaction. That would, I guess, be my answer. It's like, if you read Marx, you are reading improved versions of a lot of that stuff. And sometimes they talk about it specifically. So let's see. Yep, you ain't been doing nothing if you ain't been called a red. So it has been said. I find that to be true. The part of the problem with conservatives today, they make it too easy. They've lowered the bar. They will call Joe Biden a red, so that's the only problem. But yeah, when liberals start calling you socialist, that's when you may be over the target a little bit more. I see more questions, and I am planning to answer them. I've been going for an hour 45. I just need a quick break, so I'll be back in about 2 minutes. I'll be right back. There will be dead silence in the meantime. All right, and I'm back. So let's see. Yeah, these videos don't record themselves. It is a skill set. Video editing, yeah, I mean, I've got a certain rhythm to it, but I kind of enjoy it because to me, the video editing process, to me, the recording is harder. I don't hate it either. It's just it is time consuming. Putting the video together, I kind of like it because it means that I'm close to like the end stage. Like I'm that much closer to the final product. I do enjoy it. It's just like I have two hands and like I'm two ears and I'm one person. So it is that. It's just that people see the finished content and sometimes don't realize like how much time went into it. Anyway, 32 people in the chat, so welcome to anybody who's just come in on this. I'm just going through the questions in the chat. So Mikey says, why is the take Putin is a fascist but America probably shouldn't intervene controversial? I don't know if that's meant to be rhetorical. I think the U.S. is just pretty fucked in terms of understanding anything in the world. People in the U.S. have been lied to by the government and the military-industrial complex, which controls, like, it basically is the economy at this point. It's all, I mean, if imperialism was like the merging of bank and industrial capital into like finance capital, and then we've gone on, and Lenin talked about this, like the standing armies getting bigger and bigger. I mean, it's just so monstrous at this point. It's like all one gigantic conglomerate, like down to the military, basically. People have just been so lied to. It's just they don't know up from down anymore. So it's like everything's controversial because nobody understands anything. So I don't know. I mean, I'm actually happy to talk about this a little bit more if there's something like more specific that anybody wants to say about that. Just giving me a little bit more to go on there. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't... I think that these things are simpler than most people make them out to be. Then again, I'm a Marxist. Most people aren't. And I don't know. But, I mean, yeah, I'd be happy to keep that going if you have other examples. Dirk Richter, seriously, thank you for this work. It really isn't easy, and there's only a finite window of time. When your background noises are not going, throat's in good condition, feeling decent enough to do the readings, and I have the patience to stop and explain stuff, let alone editing. Yeah, thank you. And, again, I don't want to make myself out to be like a martyr. Like, I enjoy this to like to a great extent, I would say. To a large extent, I enjoy it. I wouldn't be doing it if I hated it, or if I hated this particular form, I would definitely find a different way to do this kind of stuff. So, it's that. It's not like I'm like crying, oh, I have to make videos. No, it's fun. It's fun to like put stuff out there and, have it achieve some of the intended effect, which is like people are getting something out of it. But yeah, no, it is work. I mean, it's rough. Like, sometimes it's just the stars are not aligning, but I want to get something on the channel anyway, and you got to push through it. Or I can't, and, whatever. I think that the output has been more consistent than it has been, though. So anyway, thanks to everybody supporting because you're making it worthwhile. Southern Comrade, big patron right there. Welcome. Glad to support you, sir, and appreciate the hours you put into the audiobooks. Much respect. Thank you. Honestly, thank you for the support because I think about it. I mean, the patron list. I initially I started the Patreon. I think in the spring of 2020. So I didn't start it right away when I did the channel. I kind of set it up because it was like something people do. I was like, well, I guess I'll set up a Patreon. I don't know, if people want to throw me some money or whatever. The channel turned out to be popular. And then I started getting, significant support. And I was like, oh, I got 30 patrons. And now it's 100. Like, as of right now, today, it's 100 patrons. And there were times where, actually, at the end of 2020, you can hear some of my, freakouts from the end of 2020. It was around New Year's. Where I was like, basically, the audience still had a lot of like Maupinites. I think infrared wasn't even around yet, but it was like there's a lot of Maupinites and like right wingers coming into the stream and just like being dicks, and I just had not banned them yet, and I just was in the video like, fuck you, stop following the channel, I don't want you in the fucking audience, go away. It's like, go away, I don't want you here. This is not what we're trying to do. fuck off, fuck you. And honestly, at that time, before we had kind of pushed through that, and before there was more differentiation, like before the Patsock thing came up, and people, and we saw that there were many people not on that side. I felt like I was one of the few people at the sort of lower tier of like Marxist YouTube who was taking that stand. And I'll say it again, thanks actually to Falcone General, very young communist out there who was like an early like commenter on the channel, and who actually was the person who like started pointing out the anti-trans stuff to me. And I was like, oh Jesus, like I didn't even know this was going on. I was like, thank you for pointing that out. And just even having that support, I was like, okay, well, I guess this needs to be dealt with and I should say something about it. And I started saying something about it, and I was having to block like dozens of people. And I was like, fuck you. Like, I don't know where you got the idea that this was Marxist, but it is not. Go away. And I was like, is there going to be any audience left after this? And I was just like, fuck. Like, I was just like, I was like, should I just shut down the Patreon? Because I didn't even want to be on the hook for like making any content, because I didn't know if it was going to like end up working at all. Then in 2021, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to start focusing on what I want to do, and starting with more feminist content. And I did some more like women and Marxism readings at that time. I didn't do as many as I would have liked, but I did a lot more than kind of was being done at the time. And I was just like, fuck off. Like, if you're not interested in this, fucking leave. Like, please. Like, I can't wait for you to do that. So it was a struggle, but I do feel like over the course of 2021, a lot of that stuff got sorted out, and now in 2022, the entire state of things is much better. And thank you to all of the patrons for the support, because I mean, not just to me personally, but if you enjoy S4A, the patrons, and again, it's not like thousands of dollars even at this point. It's just, but like having that there, even when it was like $150 a month, was motivation for me to be like, all right, people like, I get what I'm trying to get at with this is like the fact that there were people who liked the channel enough to give me any money at all to do it told me they really liked it. And to me, the fact that those people were out there, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to keep going for them at least. Not just because they were like paying me, although I'm glad to have it because I am not wealthy, let's put it that way. I mean, I'm glad to have that, and that's definitely helpful. But it was also just the fact that like people like this enough to give me money was a motivating factor. So anyway, thank you to all the patrons for that. And Southern Comrade is in fact at the top of the list quantity wise. Of course, he's I think it's a he, right? Is a physician, so has oodles of money. I'm sure after the medical school that gets paid. So from each according to ability and all that kind of stuff. But no, I really appreciate it a lot. And just having that support there, it's like, boom, I know that for every person, paying to support, there's other people who, feel similarly, just aren't in a position to do that. So, but yeah, for fans of the channel, you also thank the patrons because they're a big part of why I have done as much as I've done here. All right. SPC 244, do I allow capitalists or those who prefer it in here? Yeah, if you would like to learn about socialism, that is the sole purpose of this channel. I'm not here to really like debate or this isn't really like a socialism versus capitalism channel. This is a channel for people who are convinced that capitalism, or at least strongly suspect that capitalism needs to be left behind, that it is, as we say, the historic duty of the working class to do away with capitalism. That's the purpose of the channel, is to learn more about that and how to do it, not to debate maybe capitalism isn't so bad. That's not what we do at all. So if you want to make those comments, don't, because you probably will get banned. But if you want to learn about socialism and listen along, yeah, totally. That is why the channel is called Socialism for All. People, I'm not saying you were doing this, but sometimes people are like, "Oh, what? You're not letting me troll you? So much for socialism for all, huh?" It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't actually want it. So, and plus, just because somebody gets banned from commenting doesn't mean they can't watch the videos. You can still watch it. You just can't. I don't have to listen to your shit. So anyway, yeah, if you first of all, are you actually a capitalist? Do you own capital, or are you a worker who just sucks up to capitalists? So that's distinction number one. If you're petty bourgeois, if you own a small business, yeah, you're allowed here too. Your petty bourgeois concerns are not going to be centered. However, we would like to appeal to you in the petty bourgeoisie in that the petty bourgeoisie, small business owners, technically own some capital. However, there are two great classes in capitalism. The bourgeoisie, the capitalists, the big rich people. They are significant because even though they're small in number, they control all the stuff. And then the proletariat, the great working masses, who don't own capital, but are significant because we're 90+% of the population. The petty bourgeoisie is that kind of 5 or 10% between the big bourgeoisie and the proletariat that, again, owns some capital, but you're not big enough as a class to do anything on your own. Therefore, you have to ally with either the big bourgeoisie or with the proletariat. We would like you to ally with us. Of course, if you feel you're closer to the big bourgeoisie, that's probably where you're going to go. If you have been a worker some of the time and a small business owner some of the time, and then you might be more likely to ally with the proletariat. But yeah, I mean, if anybody who's interested in sincerely learning, why capitalism can't go on and what to do about it, yes, you're allowed in here. But don't start debating because you'll get kicked. All right. Charmander, what do people mean by globalization? Is that just international trade? I see right-wingers yelling about the globalists. Good question. So globalization, this was a big term in the 90s. Basically, why the 90s? Anything significant happen in the late 80s or early 90s that would lead the way in the mid and late 90s for globalization? Oh, how about the destruction of the USSR and Eastern European socialist countries? So what happened then? Well, capital had less restricted access to all of the world, all of the world markets. So globalization, in that sense, was capital going more global after the USSR and allied countries got knocked out of the way. So globalization is just that process of capital continuing the world market, building process and all that. So yeah, I would say that is international trade, particularly in the information age post-USSR context. It's another reason they're so frustrated with China, particularly becoming, in some ways, better at e-commerce. That's one of China's goals, is to become the world leader in e-commerce, and they're doing it pretty well. That's why that's so frustrating. They were like, no, we had it. The 90s, the 2000s, we were doing it. Now China's supposed to be our global sweatshop. What are you doing? Get down, They're very frustrated with that. So globalization was supposed to be, this end of history wraparound of capital around the globe. But then when right-wingers yell about the globalists, okay, so this is different. The globalist is kind of a dog whistle because right-wingers, like of the Alex Jones variety, these are more fascist, like reactionary nationalist types. So to a reactionary nationalist, well, it's funny because I was just doing Lenin's, critical remarks or whatever it is on the national question. In that, I mean, you don't have to just turn to that text, but it's a concept in Marxism that gets highlighted in that text. That the nation building process is part of capitalism. It's one of the distinctive things that capitalism does in its rebellion against feudalism, is it builds the nation state. And in the first half, this is a progressive thing. It's building nation states so that nations can fight off national oppression and things like that. And this power structure helps them to put feudalism into the past and the bourgeoisie with the proletariat are able to fight off the elements of feudal reaction. Okay, that's the first half. That's when capitalism and the nation-building process is actually progressive. The thing is, in the second half, after feudalism has been put down, capitalism, then the nation state is used as an instrument, now that the feudal monarchies and the feudal power structure are out of the picture. What is capitalism's task? It's to suppress the proletariat. So bourgeois ideology, and including things like nationalism, become instruments of suppressing bourgeois consciousness. So, but one of the contradictory things in that process, delete the so, but one of the things in that process is that as capitalists have built these nation states, and then they engage in international trade, well, the further that international trade gets developed, then the borders start to erode. This actually paves the way for socialism. That's one of the reasons why socialism is, the next step. Of course, you need socialist revolution to get from here to there. But in the meantime, as capitalism expands international trade, the borders soften as nations do business with each other. And the borders at that point become an impediment to global trade. So enter reactionary nationalist right-wingers trying to protect their borders against capitalism. They call it, corporate communism or some shit. It's just fucking capitalism. That's what it is. But having this sort of half-baked anti-communist understanding of Marxism, they're like, oh, the capitalists are actually globalists and they want to create a one-world government and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's just capitalism. The right-wingers, these like reactionary, like the John Birchers and people like that, they think that you can have this ultra-nationalistic, fascistic capitalism that just sort of turns the wheel of history back to, like 45% develop, like peak capitalism, when the nation state was still sort of a progressive positive force, and just hang out there indefinitely. They don't get that society and historical development marches forward. So you get all kinds of violent reaction attempting to implement, this nationalism against the international softening of borders that capitalism, the same system that they want, inevitably brings about. So the globalists becomes like a buzzword dog whistle for, name your anti-communist trope. Socialists, communists, Jews, like all the things that fascists talk about, because that's who they are. Alex Jones would use the globalists a lot because he was one of the more mainstream programs like that. But as you get more underground, they'll just talk about, whatever, like anti-Jewish things and whatever, like, conspiracy theories they come up with. Bottom line, it's all capitalism. They're describing the historical progression from capitalism to socialism, and they're thinking that capitalism is the end of history. It is not. It is not. The very nation states which enabled capitalism to develop international trade, they get destroyed in that process. It's just like, capitalism comes to power and it proletarianizes the population, and then the proletariat devours the bourgeoisie. But not understanding that, they think you can just have capitalism indefinitely, and you just can't. Anyway, this is like a major thing in Marxism, so hence the emphasis here. This is a very important thing to understand. So good question, and happen to just have that very fresh on my brain. Mikey makes mistakes. Postmodernism brought a lot of good stuff to the table, but yeah, and again, I don't even know if it was really original good stuff. Maybe it was like new to capitalism, but I don't know that it was new to Marxism. If you have specific examples, it's open to debate. On the whole, I feel like postmodernism is just another idea. It's in a way, I think, laid some of the groundwork for like neoliberalism. So as part of the general counter-revolution against Marxism and its, capitalist sort of counterparts of like regulated social democracy, things like that. All right, continuing. Mikey says, I got called a socialist when I was still a Christian Democrat. To be fair, I was to Obama's left, but holy shit, I was a center-right person on economics. Yeah, again, this is, see the previous comment about half-baked anti-communist understandings of Marxism. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So, anyway. 69 Tears said, sorry, just want to say thank you for your hard work. It's appreciated. Thanks for saying that, and no reason to be sorry. Rose Red Flechette says, do I think that animal welfare, animal liberation causes are an important element to include in a proletarian revolution? Is there a good way to tie the interests of people devoted to those causes into Marxism? So first of all, I do believe strongly in animal welfare and animal liberation. Absolutely. So is it an important element to include in revolution? I mean, I don't know if it's just the phrasing there, but like in the revolution specifically, I don't know. I mean, I think it's an important thing in general. I mean, if the question is it important strategically or tactically to include in the revolution? I think it's important, period. So, yeah, I would like to see that there. In fact, I have been looking for more on that topic. I think it's something that's not developed enough. But yeah, I'm all for that. Is there a good way to tie the interests of people devoted to those causes into Marxist ones? Yeah, I've been thinking about this at the back of my head for a while. And I got to say, the cookies are not done yet. They're still baking, so I don't want to take them out of the oven yet. But yeah, this is something I would like to see more of. I mean, you see a lot of anarchists doing sort of, you know, like animal liberation one-offs. I haven't actually read that much like animal liberation ideology beyond the in other words, as far as animal welfare, animal liberation, I was convinced pretty much at the phrase animal welfare. Like I didn't need to read a lot to like that I feel like was always my stance. So yeah, I mean, I think the basic thing is having a kinder and more humane society is one thing. Like we know that cruelty towards animals is oftentimes a predictor of cruelty towards humans, or like those things are connected. So a society that values animal life, like this is not to say that the entire society is vegetarian, although that isn't a bad thing and actually may be more necessary due to climate change, because the way that animals are farmed under capitalism, not only gigantically wasteful in terms of food resources. Of course, we do have enough food now. That's like, it's not about overcoming scarcity, but it is wasteful of resources. It's massively polluting in ways that it just boggles the mind. It's a massive contributor to pollution. The runoff from confined animal feeding operations, CAFOs. Massive runoff into rivers and stuff, just so ecologically destructive. Plus, the inside of those, they've made ag-gag laws that make it terrorism to do journalism on those places. That's how much they don't want you to see the insides of those things. So, yes, I think it would be better for society in general to stop doing a lot of the ways that we treat animals. That's not to say that no animals would ever be raised for food. I don't think that that's realistic, but I think that not doing a lot of what we're doing now and having stronger animal rights things, yes, would be a good thing. So that's as much as I've got for you at the moment. So Hydrophobic 64, sorry if this is repetitive and you've talked about this on your channel, but why is America staking their nose in Ukraine? I have talked about it. My best guess is the Russia-China alliance. They're trying to make chaos along the border and try to disrupt that. So anyway, also the point of trying to get Ukraine into NATO. Mikey says those Moppin types are why a lot of people wrongly think every L is a monster. Yeah, I agree. And I think that doing Marxism better without becoming a trot, I'm not a Trotskyist, is a good way to go about that. Is just pointing out, here's what we think, here's why, and yeah, not letting nationalist socialists, people who are embracing right-wing populism and basically fascism, calling themselves Marxists. This is utterly wrong. In fact, in that the Lenin audiobook I was just doing for exactly this reason, Lenin could not be clearer on this. He's like, if you're standing for nationalism, go stand with the petty bourgeois nationalists. This is not Marxist. Like, it's just utterly clear. Anyway, Rose Red Flechette says, outside of joining an org, what should people in less agitated professions, IT for instance, or something else, where people have things like vacation days and benefits due to agitating their workplaces? I mean, the same thing that you would do anywhere else as far as agitating in your workplaces. Like, see if you can find a training on union organizing. I have a PDF of this. I may put it up on the channel. Of like how to do social mapping of your workplace. Try to identify people who might be sympathetic, like people who have voiced, some like who have voiced some complaints about the workplace or whatever, and see who rides to work with whom, and who's friends with whom, and like try to get a sense of like what the layout is, and if you were to start talking to people about a union, although to be clear, you do not use the word union until like the very end, because a lot of people just get terrified when you say it. You start sizing up who might be supportive or whatever. You can also join, you can either found or join organizations, or start like a Twitter page or Facebook page online for just publicizing issues like news stories related to work issues in your profession. If you're not ready to like, either start an effort in your exact workplace, or if your workplace doesn't lend it to that, you can start doing professional organizations, or just, like I said, more of like an open agitation for the public. Start like a media outlet. And for that, I would definitely recommend finding some other people to partner with to cover stories. You can look at, there are various news sites where you can get stories like labor notes or things like that, and just look for things in your industry and just promote the hell out of it, so that, and I don't know, post stuff on LinkedIn or like whatever, not LinkedIn, what's the other one? Indeed, like job sites, and I don't know, just see how you can get it to people. And then, maybe one of the existing unions will make it more of an issue, like you can follow them, retweet their stuff, leave your links on their comments, like whatever. So I don't know, those are a few thoughts. Mikey says, can someone take Vosh out of the left-wing influencer sphere? Yeah, I was a favor of, I don't even know what to say. I've done about half a dozen videos on that individual or entity, and they do not belong in a left-wing sphere. Literally, their entire fucking Twitter feed right now is like trying to hype war with Russia. And so many fucking Rose Twitter fucking douchebags, and that's not to say that every Rose Twitter person is a douchebag, but these ones is like just going along with it. It's fucking sickening. So, let's see. SPC 244 says, I support capitalism, I'm just a worker. Me. All right, well, let me just tell you, capitalism is not in your material interest. What capitalism does for you is it pays you subsistence wages so that you can go and multiply the capital that a capitalist owns. So you make a capitalist richer and you get subsistence in return. You could do a lot better than that. A lot better is socialism. But in order to achieve that, we need to remove the capitalists from power. That's what we call revolution, a change of ruling class. Not just a ruling clique, but the ruling class itself. The working class must become the ruling class. So anyway, those are the basics. But no, you're happy to, watch videos and even ask sincere questions. The whole, we're definitely not a pro-capitalism page here. All right. Comrade Trimander, any idea why the U.S. didn't cozy up to Putin and rather made him an enemy? I know when he first became president, he even wanted to join NATO. U.S. had a great chance to pull apart Russia and China. No, I do not know the specifics about that. I am just not that up on, beyond some general things like the particulars of really recent Russian history. So no, I do not know. I would love to know. I do not know. Olives Black says, was a Vosh fan for a very brief period. being someone who enjoys the sorts of games he does from time to time. Yeah, I think it's important. I'll finish your comment, but taking a sip of my drink here. I think it's important to remember a lot of this comes out of these like horrible like Nazi debating quote unquote left wing political streamers. They're just video game players who decided to start talking about politics. They're not necessarily good at it. Like, stick to the game, seriously. And I want to thank you for that video that you did that broke down how terrible his understanding of theory was in the 2020 election. It opened my eyes as to how much I have left to learn. Well, good. I'm glad that that was helpful for you. And yes, I remember doing that video. It's about 3 hours long. And I think I said something like, let me see if I can find the video. In new low of vote shaming, Vosh tries to tell people that Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Mao want you to vote for Biden. Something to that effect. And yeah, I really broke it down in detail. It was one of the worst, most obvious examples of like cherry-picked quotes that he obviously had not read the larger works from. Obviously. I mean, he says himself he doesn't read. So, yeah, people like that who just don't know what they're talking about shouldn't talk about things that they don't know. But I'm glad that that was helpful. And, I try to get in at least a few videos on a lot of the larger personalities. So, I've temporarily kind of backed away from doing those criticisms because I feel like I made a lot of my point already, but I'll probably pick it up eventually again. So Rose Red Flechette says, as far as like getting Vosh out, one, numerous leftist content creators at once all loudly and unambivalently denounce him and not just the person he recently bullied in a debate, or two, if literally everyone ignores him. Yeah, I agree. I think the first is, he's going to be around because, I mean, he has a lot of support and, we don't know where all of it's coming from, but he's very pro-Democrat, let's put it that way. I think that just making it clear that he is not on the side of this content creator and this content creator, and if you like this content creator or that one, that this is a firmly, anti-Vosh zone. I think that that's probably the most likely thing because I don't know if everyone... I mean, and then I think number two comes out of that. People probably ignore him more after he's already been... Well, look at what's happening in Infracell. Yeah, he became the laughing stock, and I think people are just not really listening so much. So anyway, I think that's kind of the way it has to be done. Petamillo, what do I think? Okay, we've done Russia and Ukraine a few times. Again, people keep asking me for my take. Anyway, been over it. Charmander, how can we get the first world proles to care about the people they're exploiting? This is a really broad question. I'm just not equipped to answer at the particular moment. Rose Red Flechette, given the toxic and chauvinist gun culture in the United States, how feasible do you feel it is to frame the right to bear arms in the Marxist sense, i.e. under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered? Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary, as Marx wrote. You could start having more of a gun safety culture, I think, for starters, because getting rid of the guns is not looking likely. First of all, I mean, just from a practicality perspective, it's not looking politically likely as maybe the Democratic Party would want to do. That said, I mean, there's an epidemic of gun violence, which has many underlying causes, and I think that's where Marxists should maybe dig into. So having more of a gun safety thing and trying to displace the right-wing dominance in gun culture, like just doing more with it. I recently asked, this isn't like a huge part of my background. Like, I didn't grow up in like a super conservative place where there's like tons of guns. There were some guns, but it just like wasn't a big part of life. So it's not something to me that I wasn't like growing up in rural Wyoming. So I can't speak to that so much from personal experience. But trying to displace them That would be, I think, step one to me, because I think it is clear that you can have a population that has a lot of guns available that also isn't a war zone. The United States is like a war zone for the amount of gun violence going on, but it's also tied to the racism, the fascism, and everything else going on. So that needs to be displaced. I don't think I'm the person to do that. Like I said, I was recently asking Twitter followers for their recommendations on that, and because there's probably people just more familiar with it than I am. But I think probably trying to push them out and to change the tone on what having and using a gun means, and confronting that more head on, because it is an important and powerful aspect, I think, of U.S. fascism. So, good question. Dirk Richter. That was a response to the capitalism one. So, yeah, that's similar to what I said. Red Wizard says, we should use organizations or any ways of labor in the U.S. to link up with the rest of international labor. I see the rise of interest in unions as a stepping stone to that. Yeah, I mean, the rise of unions right now is a long way to go before it was even on the level that it was at in 1960. So we got a long way to go. We really have a long way to go. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, just, trying to build more consciousness of what is going on in other countries by spreading information about it. That's it. As far as getting people to care, information is kind of step one. But, dissecting how stuff that is in the United States even gets there, demonstrating the international supply chain. I think that some of the stuff about, showing the lithium mining, for example, like the cell phone, the cell phone, it's like a second brain for most people now, does a lot of thinking for us. I'm not saying that's entirely bad. It lets people do a lot of things. I'm just saying it's very important to people. It's like a second brain. People are very attached to their phones, showing, the exploitation behind, the like lithium mining and stuff like that. I think that was effective. So doing things like that, showing those pictures, that can be effective. Green, is that Green Key or Green Kentucky? Some analysts said that the U.S. needed Russia on the outside so that the EU states would remain in the U.S. circle. Oh, so in other words, NATO might become more Russian-centric, or that could be. If Russia integrates with the EU economically, NATO would be would be redundant, and the EU would be more independent in their foreign policy. So yeah, that's key. And this is another thing as far as the China's Belt and Road Project, which would link the EU through Europe and Central Asia. I don't know if I just said that correctly, but it would link China and the EU. That could become your sort of new West Coast, East Coast, if you will, through Russia and Central Asia. And the U.S. is suddenly more on its own. And, in a continent where a lot of the countries kind of, are sick and tired of its bullshit. The U.S. started as kind of an outpost of European imperialism and, early capitalism and mercantilism and all that stuff. And now it's like the most, it's the military arm of imperialism and is this bastion of reaction. I could see, the EU trying to get away from that. Yeah, I think that's do you know which analyst that was who was saying that? I'd be interested in following up on that. Mikey makes mistakes. Says, can we touch more on the difference between imperialist/reactionary nationalism and anti-colonialist nationalism like Pan-Amerindianism or Pan-Africanism? So, just recall what I said before about in the beginning, the nation-state building process is a more progressive one, where it's fighting against national oppression through the vehicle of the nation-state. This can be a tool against, colonization as well. But then at a point, once that nation-state starts behaving in a capitalist way, it starts eroding its own borders. It becomes, oppressive towards the working class, etc. I'm not saying this really perfectly right now. But Pan-Africanism, I mean, that's explicitly socialist. It's forming a Pan-African union on a socialist basis. I mean, I think that the destruction of Gaddafi's Libya was like probably a setback for that. Um, so yeah. Anyway, I don't know too much else to say about that that isn't kind of the basics, but imperialist and reactionary nationalism. It's because you've already thrown off the the feudal elements. There's really no progressive or positive um, element to that kind of nationalism at that point. It's nationalism that is in service of dominating the working class, both domestically and around the world. So, but more nascent, like upward swing capitalism is not of that type. It's not at that stage. U.S. always needs a boogeyman. Agreed. I mean that seems to be the way that it goes. Enemy of the year, enemy of the decade. It's communism. It's terrorism. It's now they're going back to communism, China. I mean, it's about the money. The history of society is the history of class struggle. So we know that. That's fundamental. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up. SBC asks, I don't know too much about unions. Can you explain, please? Labor unions. This is like kind of big. I felt like I was going to wrap up, and I was like, I'll take one more question. Too much about unions. Well, unions are basically a position of strengthening the bargaining that workers can do, because when capital is very united, and when you go into a workplace, capital controls the facilities. They control your ability to work there. They control, in other words, the ability to hire and fire. And if they don't hire you, or if they fire you, then you can no longer make your living. So even the subsistence you are getting through the wages, you're denied access to what we call the means of production, the equipment and the raw materials, all the stuff that's used to make goods and services. That, the means of production, is controlled by capitalists. In capitalism, that's their legal property. When we say that we're against private property, we don't mean personal property. We don't mean your toothbrush or your shoes. We mean keeping industrial property, which cannot be used on a personal basis, as private property. Because the capitalists, they can't. If you have a factory that requires 100 people to operate it and make whatever goods or services you're doing there, probably goods, if it's a factory, the one or two or three capitalists funding the place and owning the place, they can't operate it. You need 100 people. So when we say abolish private property, we're talking about abolishing the conditions where 3 people can own something that requires 100 people to use it. That should be collective property, because that's the nature of labor. As capitalism goes on, it gets more socialized. People have to cooperate in larger and larger groups, and so forth, except for very small businesses. But generally, the economy does not run, on small shops. It's, large enterprises with hundreds or even thousands of employees. That shouldn't be private property. That should be public property, obviously with rules restricting it to, the kind of work that it's supposed to do. People can't just go in there and, dismantle it. But we don't believe in having that being private. So for socialists, ultimately, we want to end the condition where capitalists can legally have stuff that should be public property as private property. Now, in part of that process, workers form unions. Why? To strengthen our bargaining position. Not all unions are revolutionary. Not all unions want to end capitalism. Some unions are just reformist. They want to get a better shake for the working man, as they say. Fair day's wage for a fair day's work. Socialists just want to abolish that system entirely. But anyway, unions, the idea is that you go in as an individual. The bosses have all the power. They can hire and fire. They can tell you to get out. This is private property. And if they fire you, you're trespassing. Then you got to find a way to make your living somewhere else if you can. They don't care. But if you collectively bargain, rather than bargaining as individuals, you have a much stronger position. Why? Because, again, the capitalists need, let's say, 100 people to run your factory. If you form a union and all the workers agree to bargain collectively, then if the bosses don't do what you're asking for, you can take coordinated labor actions and force them to do it. Again, from a socialist perspective, this is just in the meantime. You're forming a counterpower against the dominant power, capitalists. That's in the meantime. Eventually, in socialism, the working class just is the dominant power, and we would publicly own that factory. And then you don't need the same, the union is still there to administrate the work, but not to fight the boss, because at that point there wouldn't be a boss. But the idea is that you're strengthening your position as an individual worker from individual bargaining to collective bargaining. And there are more consequences for the boss if they don't go along with your demands. So those are some of the basics. Unionization, it caught on as a mass movement in the 19th century into the 20th century. And then after World War II, there were very reactionary labor laws passed that made it very, very difficult to form or maintain a labor union in the United States. That's not the case in every country, but in the United States in particular. And so the labor movement got really hurt by that. Unions have kind of been on a downward slide since 1960. Recently, it looks like there might be more workers joining together to fight the bosses. And hopefully we as socialists can encourage them to not just fight for better conditions and wages and stuff like that. That's what we call economism, when you limit your struggle just to better conditions and pay. We want to go beyond mere economism. I mean, fight for that in the short term, yes. But we want to go beyond that to revolutionary aims. Like, why keep fighting the boss when you can just get rid of the boss's power? Because it all comes down to legal claims from the capitalist property, legal system, saying that the capitalist has a legal claim to that that's backed up by the courts and the police. Well, in a socialist government, capitalism isn't allowed legally, so we would change that system at the root, the law. So anyway, there's some basics on unions from a socialist. Green Key says, Michael Hudson has an article out on Russia, though most of the analysis does not go further than what the title suggests. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Making a note of that now. Michael Hudson, NATO, EU, Russia. Okay. And there you go. Rose Red Flechette posts the link to Union from the Marxist.org glossary. Very good. Thank you. Hoosier says, take care, everyone. Take care. And my opinion on so-called de-Stalinization era in the USSR is going to have to wait for another day, because I got to get going. I've been on here for about 2 hours and 36 minutes. But it's a good question, if a very general one, that probably is better answered after we've done all those texts, because I can give you the kind of answer that probably a lot of people give. There's a lot of text I want to go over in a lot more detail before really getting into that. All right. If anybody else, when's the next live feed? So right now I've got these scheduled for the same time, 2 p.m. Pacific or 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So that's what we're doing for right now, is Tuesdays and Saturdays. And so you can catch it there. Of course, we're online at youtube.com/socialism for all, Twitter at twitter.com/socialism S4A. And you can get caught up there. And by the way, SPC, thanks for giving it your ear. And by the way, the default is you grew up in a capitalist country, you grew up with capitalist ideology being taught to you, and also if you're in the U.S., there's not a real strong socialist movement. We're trying to build it right now, or rebuild it. I mean, there used to be a stronger socialist movement. We've lived through a lot of decades of reaction and counter-revolution and conservatism. So we're trying to rebuild it. So the fact that you're even here, asking about what is a union and having an open mind, that's awesome, and want to encourage that. And you can look through the channel on YouTube for some takes on current events and things like that. If you're interested, that's what it's there for, so that people can learn. All right. Well, so again, we'll see you next time on the live stream, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for an hour or two at least. And we're getting close to Twitch affiliate status. I might cut back at that point. I might not. These are pretty good. These are pretty good. I mean, as long as you all are okay with, like, sometimes I just don't feel like my particular answer on a topic is especially brilliant. I'd rather just not bullshit you with like, here, let me be the final word on that. If I don't know or if I don't feel like answering, that's going to be my answer. I wish more people were, so honest. But anyway, I'm out, and we'll catch you in the next time. I've already thanked the patrons profusely, but thanks as always to the patrons.